Hey, it is good to see you on the beginning of this week on a Monday. And we are going to be continuing looking at our introduction to the book of Romans. I didn't get finished with that on Sunday, and so I bit off more than I could chew. And, well, that happens sometimes. And we are going to be looking at that last part of the introduction, verses 8 through 17. Again, now that's covering some of the ground we covered last week, but I'm going to do it a little more slowly. And what I'm proposing to do is break it down into four: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Today we're going to look at verses 8 through 12. Tomorrow we're going to look at verses 13 through 15. And then Wednesday, verse 16, and then Thursday, verse 17. And 16 and 17, very, very important, getting those verses. Verses 8 through 15 are basically Paul talking to the Romans about the church there in Rome, about his plans, what he's wanted to do, what he's hoping to do. Not in detail, just kind of generally. And he will say later what he wants them specifically to help him do. But this right here is just general. It's just saying he's introducing himself, introducing who he is, what he's about, what the message he proclaims is all about. But there's still, even within this introduction, some pretty dense things, thick to get through that can be difficult. So as we start this, Paul turns to his Thanksgiving section of the letter, which is part of the introduction as well. And so his Thanksgiving begins this way. First, I thank my God through Jesus Christ for you all, because your faith is being proclaimed throughout the whole world. Now that's significant, because what Paul is saying is that their faith in Jesus Christ as Lord, the Lord of the world, the King of Kings, that the superior to all kings. Now remember what time this is, first century, and who is supposed to be the Lord of the world? Well, that's Caesar, of course, Kaiser Kurios. So Caesar's Lord. And for, at that time period, what's taking place in Rome would filter out into the other areas, and that, who are these people that are talking about Jesus being Lord, and what is this all about, and why is and who is this Jesus anyway, and what is this? What do they mean that he is Lord? Caesar's Lord, that kind of thing, and they are saying that no, that this Jesus is this who was crucified and resurrected. He's the Lord of the world. This kind of stuff, and so that was, I would think, probably kind of scary, kind of risky business. To be talking about that, and people are hearing about it. People are hearing about this out in the provinces, out in these other areas, that of their faith in Jesus Christ as Lord, quite significant. And would that people would hear about our faith like that, hear about, let's say, Troy First Baptist Church, or hear about believers in this hour in which we live in Western civilization, that those believers over there, they claim no allegiance to some political party. They claim allegiance to Jesus Christ as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, as the master of the ruler of the world, all of this. And they act different. They have some very funny ideas about morality and ethics. And they are lovely people, though. They are a loving bunch. I will say that for them. Would that they would say that about us. Too often, I think there's no distinction between culture and Christians in Western culture, and that shouldn't be that way, especially in the age in which we live, when there are battle lines being drawn up almost on every front, whether it's morality, whether it's ethics, whether it's spirituality, whatever it may be. There's a narrative that is being published, being pushed forward by groups of people within this nation who are godless, as far as I can see, and it is a pushing of immorality. It's one of my favorite verses to describe Western society is Psalm 8, verse 12, or it's Psalm 12, verse 8. I can't remember right off the top of my head. It is one of my favorites, though. What it says is that wickedness struts up and down the streets when vileness is exalted among the sons of men. When you exalt vileness, ugliness, godlessness, immorality, when that is exalted, when that is praised among humanity, then wickedness struts along, proudly struts out in front of everyone, is paraded about when that takes place. And that's what's happening in society. And Christians need to stand up and be counted in this time. We lovingly, but truthfully, and standing up and saying, this is what we believe. Jesus has changed everything. Jesus, we've been liberated from these dark powers, and you're trying to enslave us once again by these dark powers. And so would that our faith would be heard like these Christians' faith were being heard who were in Rome. For God, whom I serve in my spirit in the preaching of the gospel of his Son, remember we talked about that speaking of the Paul in one of two things, the way the sentence is structured, is either worshiping, because that's what it means, service, to worship. He is worshiping God in his spirit, whom he served, and worshiping God in his spirit, either in the proclamation of the gospel itself, or he's worshiping God when he thinks on the content of the gospel itself. And of course, the content is that Jesus is the Son of God, born of David, a descendant of David in the flesh, and declared the Son of God in power by the resurrection from the dead, by the Spirit of God, the Spirit of righteousness. Anyway, that's the content that this is taking place, and it's all about the faithfulness of Yahweh to his promises. His justice is being done. The world is being set right, and the promises to Israel and really to the nations being fulfilled in and through Jesus Christ. And so it's one of those two things. Either when he is preaching the gospel, this good news of Jesus, either he is worshiping God in spirit while he's doing that, or he's worshiping God when he thinks on the content of it. Either one of them works, and maybe it's both. It's a worshipful experience to me when I study and preparing to preach, or actually when I'm preaching, that is my worship. I'm worshiping during that time, and so it could be one or the other. But why divide it if you don't have to, right? So anyway, that's the way I look at it. And then he says, as God is my witness as to how unceasingly I make mention of you, always in my prayers making request, if perhaps now at least by the will of God I may succeed in coming to you. Now Paul would have prayed 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening. The morning and the evening sacrifices, the daily talmids that were done twice a day. And then at noon, it was the typical Jewish way of praying. He would have done that. Now, could he have prayed other times? Absolutely. He would have, of course, recited the Shema morning and evening. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, and we are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our mind, all our strength, all our soul, that kind of thing. He would have had those prayers, and there were other prayers, the benedictions and so forth, all of that. But he would have also included prayers for these churches and for various Christians, just as we have our own times of prayer, whatever they may be, and we include in those prayers various requests or concerns, praying intercessions, and Paul is saying that he is interceding on their behalf. He is lifting them up, and he is interceding for them, and he is seeking their benefit and seeking their encouragement and strengthening and protection, because he knows how risky it is for them there in Rome to claim Jesus as Lord. When Caesar everywhere around is being called Lord. If perhaps now at least by the will of God I may succeed in coming to you. So what he's saying is, I've often planned to come to you. And you continue reading that. For I long to see you so that I may impart some spiritual gift to you. He's been wanting to come to them. He's planned to come to them, but he hasn't been able to come to them. And, there's this, as N.T. Wright points out, he probably has learned by this time not to tell like he did at Corinth, and they got mad at him when he was in Ephesus, that he planned to come to them, and they said, he said he would come, but he didn't come. You can't trust him, that kind of thing. What kind of guy is he? He has no integrity. And he had to answer to that. And there was some difficulty at Corinth, and there's some heartbreak there at Corinth for Paul. And so here he says, he doesn't say, he never told him, I'm coming. But he said, I've longed to, I wanted to, I've prayed to, I've been hindered from coming. But he understands that if he gets to come, it'll be by God's will. And I think we need to understand that as well. Can we make plans? Sure. Should we make plans? Absolutely. But it is by God's will, by God actively working this out in our lives and his willing this to take place, that we get to do these things. He allows us to do the things when we're doing them in the kingdom. When it comes to what I eat for lunch, do I think God cares about that? Not really. As long as I'm not a glutton, as long as I'm feeding myself and being nutritious and trying to be healthy and that kind of thing, which I do. Not always successfully, but I do try. And who does really? Anyway, you know what I mean. But about kingdom work and about mission work and that kind of stuff, he's been hindered in coming from there. God has not allowed that to take place. And I do think God gets involved when it's about his church, when it's about the gospel, when it's about these. I think God is involved in that. For I long to see you so that I may impart some spiritual gift to you that you may be established. Now, before we say, what in the world is he saying? Is he so stuck up that, they can't be established unless he comes? No, but he wants to come and share the spiritual giftedness that he has, along with them sharing with him, so that they will be, and that word that is used for established means to be set up firmly, to be set up and to stand up and be immovable, to be set so it doesn't move around. He wants them to be consistent and constant and to be immovable and to be strong, that kind of thing. And so he says this, and he said this in verse 12, he explains what that is. That is, that I may be encouraged together with you while among you, each of us by the other's faith, both yours and mine. And so what he means by establishing and coming and sharing with them, that he wants them both to be encouraged, that they can encourage one another in their spiritual giftedness and in the faith that they share, and to build one another up and to strengthen one another and to establish one another. And that's a marvelous thing. That's the wonderful thing about Christian fellowships. And that's the neat thing about small groups within the church, whether it be a Sunday school class or some other small group. Whatever it is, it needs to be small enough that there is this ability to encourage one another in faith. It has to be informal enough so that there's some encouraging there's give and take, there's back and forth, so that we can share together in the faith of Jesus Christ, and that establishes us and builds us up together. And that's one of the important things about not neglecting gathering together for the worship of God. Now, in a larger setting, let's be honest, in a larger setting within worship, that's not the place for that personal communication and that place where that sharing together and fellowship, Christian fellowship, can take place. Really, that needs to be a Sunday school class, some kind of small group class, a men's group, a women's group, something like that, where this mutual sharing with one another can take place. And unfortunately, the dynamics for that, as far as human psychology goes, it's been shown that the most people that we can know intimately, know details about and share caring and that kind of, is about 20. When that gets doubled to 40, we're maxed out. We are maxed out. When you get beyond that, which is why most churches stop at around 80, because you have doubled the max amount that anyone can keep up with, and it becomes beyond that, you have to change how you do things. So at 20, we're really comfortable. At 40, we can still know something about people, but we can't know them intimately. When you double that to 80, then I don't know some of these folks very well at all. And you have to change how you manage that kind of entity, how you work with that, and roles and expectations have to change as well. But that's the importance of small groups and what Paul is talking about. And these would have been small, that maybe 100 and some odd there at Rome, at a population of 1 million, as N.T. Wright supposes, and others have supposed as well. there wouldn't have been a large number of Christians at this early date within Rome. I suspect that later on there were multiple churches there in Rome, but most churches were single home churches, and they weren't large enough to be branched out into several, although I think that developed where you had multiple churches in areas where it was meeting with great success. And very soon, I'm sure that Rome had multiple churches as well. And so you get into multiplicity of elders and so forth and all of that. And besides that, here I go, wandering down some trail like I often do. But the point is that being involved in a small group, a fellowship group, is very, very, very important. You can't really build one another up by the mutuality of your spiritual giftedness, except being together in some kind of small group, whether that small group is short-term or long-term, whether that small group is a mission team, whether that small group is a praise team, whether that small group is pastoral staff on a congregation, whether that small group, there has to be that, whether it's a youth group and even within a youth group, when you get like 30 or 40 youth together in a youth group, you lose a small group dynamic with that. When it goes beyond 20, 25, you have lost a small group dynamic of being able to share together. That's why I was always trained, cut off Sunday school at 20 to 25, you start a new Sunday school because the class becomes unmanageable. And I know that's not popular. People, we want to get as big as we can get and all that. Yeah, except for the fact that you really don't have that same fellowship dynamic, that small group dynamic of sharing and growing together and encouraging one another that Paul is talking about here. And so the point of all of that is that love that needs to be shared, that enables us to open up with one another because of the love of Christ that is in us, and that enables us to love other people and to see other people as especially as believers, brothers and sisters, and to encourage one another and to share with one another. That's all based in the love of God that is shown to us and the faithfulness of God that's shown to us in Jesus Christ. Hey, listen, that's 8 through 14. 8 through 14. 8 through 12. And we'll pick up 13 through 15 tomorrow. But all of that is to say that God loves you. He's given His Son, Jesus Christ, that you might have forgiveness of sin, eternal life, and joy indescribable right here and right now. I pray that that's yours. Hey, listen, I continually pray for you, and I pray that God's blessings, especially the blessings of His shalom that comes through Jesus Christ and only through Jesus Christ, I pray that that's yours. His peace. The peace that means nothing lacking, wholeness, completeness. I pray that that's yours in Jesus Christ. Hey, listen, God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.